All right, we got Brian McCulloch. We got the defending champ from the BWR of 2018, and just a few months away. And you're pretty close to starting the season. So Brian, it's a little off season. You're training. You thinking about BWR 19 right now?
Every day, buddy. I think of it all the time. Yeah, I would be lying to you if I didn't tell you that.
All right, so let's just kind of go back a little bit. You did BWR. That was your second year last year, correct?
Yes, sir. I did it. I did it in 2017, and then I won it in 2018.
Okay, so let's kind of get the cliff notes from 2017. We'll dive into 2018 a little more, but 2017 was your first one doing it. Obviously, you're a pro cyclist. You do, Tour of Utah. You do all the big races. BWR. You know, it's kind of it's emerging to this bigger event, but it's not a full pro road race. What was like your thoughts of like the first one, 2017, on how it was, the difficulty of it, and just from your average race you normally do?
Well, I would say it. I didn't go into it thinking it was some, second-rate event. That's for sure. Belgian Waffle Ride deserves anything that's 140 miles, anything that's 6+ hours and can draw 1,500 people from all walks of life. That demands respect. And so I went into the 2017 version not knowing what to expect other than I sized my equipment off of what other people were doing and was hoping that I could just, I have a background racing motorcycles, and so I knew that I could ride on the dirt, but I also knew that I could get myself into some real trouble real quick. And in fact, I did. I was with the lead group. I can't remember what the section was. It's like the second time there's by a dam. I think it's at Black Canyon the second time.
Mm-hmm.
And I had rim brakes and I just crashed on the descent really, really hard, broke my hand and gave myself concussion.
I remember those photos, yeah.
Yeah, and you know this from being a dirt biker yourself, but we don't quit. Like there's no dirt bike riding, there's no quit. There's no tag somebody in for a timeout or let's take a break. Like I got up, bike was pretty jacked up. I bent the derailleur back. I fixed my hoods were all jacked up and I couldn't put my hand on the bar because my hand was broken, but I just finished, right? And I went as hard as I could. And like after, it was really hard because I rode some road for a while, and that was like I couldn't beat aero, and so I'd kind of just setting my elbow on the hood, and that's just kind of cheese. But I got through after about, it sounds crazy, but I want you to think of, and this, you think of Belgian Waffle Ride like it's a play. There's like chapters and acts to it, right?
Yeah.
Like and I went through a really bad part after the crash, and then all of a sudden, like after about an hour and a half, like I just didn't care anymore. Like it hurt, my hand hurt, it was swelling, my head hurt. I kind of couldn't see very well. I hit my head pretty hard, but I was like, it didn't matter, right? Like as long as I could press the pedals, like I could just get through it. And I started building some momentum, and I ended up coming in ninth. And I really vividly remember, like I passed Phil. I passed Phil on the on like maybe 5K to go or something like that. I passed Phil, and
Tinsman?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Phil Tinsman. I should say his last name.
Yeah,
so I passed
awesome.
Phil Tinsman on like the last
hard time.
Yeah, exactly. The last 5K I passed him, and he was a salty dog that day. And he looked at me like, where did you come from, man? And I was like, rock on, brother. Like, yeah, like, and let's get after it, And then there was one more guy, like this guy looked back and he saw me. He was maybe like 1K ahead of Phil, of Tinsman, and I was like, dude, I didn't come this far to like, I didn't know where I was on the road, but like, again, dirt bike mentality, like I didn't come this far to quit. I came this far to find something special, and I was like, okay, so I went all in, and, I couldn't put my hand on the bars or whatever. So like, I was trying to like drop this kid. Like, I don't even remember the kid's name. He was probably real nice kid. But anyway, I ended up like getting ninth or whatever it was. And won the KOM jersey there that year. And I remember afterwards just like sitting with everybody in total awe of the event, and like just how it was so much fun. And I got to sit there and eat with everybody and high five with everybody afterwards. And I ended up having to sit on the ground for a while. And I remember Neil Shirley's daughters, they're just so cute. They came over to me and they're like, Brian, you're all bloody. Like, what's wrong? And I was like, I'm sorry, girls. Like, I'd love to give you a hug right now. But, it was a rough
I got
situation.
to like see straight first. So going, one of the biggest talking points with BWR is always like bike setup because, you can go so many different ways. I personally believe it's kind of all about what you kind of bring to the table as far as skill level and what you're comfortable with. So
for sure,
going into 17 for your first time, pro cyclist, moto background, did you nail it with your bike setup or did you come out of it going, we need to change this up for next year?
100% needed to change it up because I literally rode my training bike I just put 28 tires, 28C tires on it. And I had rim brakes and I thought that I was a smart thing. I put my, carbon tube, my carbon clincher race wheels on there thinking they're wider. They're going to be better with 28s, but the braking was so bad with the carbon brakes that I really got myself into. And again, as a dirt bike rider, like, you want to send it on the downhill, which is really not smart. And
that's like
this,
the fun part though.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But I was like, yeah, send it with the guys. And then, man down. Right. But, so definitely I did not nail the setup. I came back in, 2018 with literally, I think I was riding the same bike actually. I was riding the same bike, but I just put, I put different wheels on that were aluminum, tubeless, and I ran the same Maxxis Padrone 28 tubeless tires. And I can't say enough good things about those Maxxis tires. They're durable. I train with them all the time, and they work great, and they got me through BWR. So they're definitely something I would say.
You ran tubes in 17?
Yeah, I ran tubes in 17.
Did you get flats?
No, I got no flats. No flats.
That's
no,
like
I just couldn't. I just couldn't brake. I couldn't slow down. Right?
I don't know what's better, like not slowing down or just getting flats.
Well,
okay, so you come back the next year, and so you upped your game.
Yes, I would say I upped the game, but again, I was really nervous about what to run because I don't, I don't have a lot of equipment access to be able to say, okay, hey, we're going to do this or that. I have great team equipment, but it's designed for road racing, right? I mean, we have excellent team equipment, right?
Like a lot of people don't realize because I would say 98% of people that ride BWR are, the casual amateur style cyclists. And then you get your few pros that do it. And those people can pick, I'm going to run a 30C tire with a disc or this gravel bike. I'm going to go kind of pick and choose and build it. And you guys are kind of limited of like, at the end of the day, you got to be sponsor correct. And sometimes you only have X amount what you can work with. So so what was the setup last year for 18?
For 18, it was literally my race. It was my training bike. So, Ultegra cable, 11 speed, Flight 900 KHS. It was great. And I had, FSA brakes on it, and I had access to aluminum training wheels. They were just Shimano aluminum training wheels, and I put on really good brake pads, and so that I could actually slow down. And I used the Maxxis Padrone tires because the tires were fantastic. They were fantastic with tubes in them. Man, when I went tubeless, they were like, oh my gosh, this is even better, right? But I will tell you,
running. Do you remember what you're running tire pressure for that?
Actually, I have to tell you, and I have to give a shout out here. So it'll take me a quick minute, but in 2011 was the first year I joined what is now Elevate KHS Pro Cycling. So I've been with them for 9 years, and we had a mechanic the first year. His name is Justin Dillon, and he worked part-time at Shimano and part-time for us. And so the day before 2018 Belgian waffle ride, I saw Justin again, and it's been a couple of years, and we call him Peanut Butter and Jelly. That's his nickname. So we call him PB&J. And so I saw PB&J, who's my old mechanic, at the the welcome party that everyone has down at Canyon. And I go down there and I give him a big hug, and he's like, "Hey, you can win tomorrow. And I was like, dude, come on, bro. There's like some super studs here. Like Ted King's here, all these guys. Like, I can't, come on, man. Like, I'm just a bike rider. And he's like, dude, run 60 PSI and trust me. And I was like, dude, that's way too low. There's no way I could do that. Like,
that's a bit low.
That's too low. So literally Justin Dillon. So here you go. Justin Dillon, if you're listening, you're the man, bro. Like he told me 60 PSI. Yeah, he better be listening. I'm going to tell him to listen. Yeah. No, he's got two lovely little kids that he's probably chasing after right now. But so long and short of it is I ran 60 PSI because I learned a long time ago racing, like when good people give you advice and if it seems a little off, like, man, you just got to take it. You just got to take it and run with it because they're giving it from a place of love and they're giving it from a place of your best interest. So it sounded crazy at the time, but I went for it and I was like, I totally trust Justin and, you know, I would do it again in a heartbeat. And if Justin came and told me to run 50, I'd do it. If Justin came back and said, hey, dude, today run 80 instead, I wouldn't even question. I'd just do it.
All right. So anyone's got any tire pressure, hit up Justin.
Apparently Justin is the tire pressure Yoda. You know, he knows.
All right. So yeah, okay. Kind of like hijack that story. So let's hear the rest about the setup for the winning machine for 18.
It was literally, I didn't do anything. Like I know this sounds kind of crazy. Like it's my training bike. I train on Shimano wheels with 28 and I should say, you know, we want to be sponsor correct, but I want to be honest. Like I buy those Shimano or buy those Maxxis Padrones. Like those are, we have great equipment that's given to us for the team, but I really love the Maxxis product. And so I bought those Padrone tubeless and I made them tubeless on the team tires, the team wheels that they gave me. And so I mean, you can say all you want that I was like being sponsor correct, but literally I really believe in that product. It's like super good.
Well, they won, so, you know, they got to do something, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's get a little info then, little tips from the former or the current champ, I guess you could say, for BWR, because we're not there yet from the new one. But so that bike was good for you and you won on it. But you're a pro cyclist, you got moto background. How do you tell, or what kind of tips can you tell to the local Cat 3 cyclist or the person that doesn't even race and they're just here for like you know, they want to get through it? Because, you know, BWR offers all types of terrain from, you know, paved roads to, you know, single track stuff to dirt roads to up and down. Like, how are these, you know, how's everyone going to really get their bike to be good for them for the day of the event? Because it's such a different ride from anything else.
I think this is an awesome question. It's so important. Equipment for Belgian Waffle Ride is the single greatest influencer of the kind of performance you are going to have. It's either going to allow you as an athlete to get everything out or it will hold you back, right? And so thankfully, through our company, Big Wheel Coaching, I have had the opportunity to coach people to all types of people to Belgian Waffle Ride over the last like 5 or 8 years, right? Or 5 years or so. And so I've had guys that are like they're on the 11-hour program and they just want to finish it. So I know what kind of equipment that guy needs. And then you have like some guys that are racers that like this is their bucket list event for the year. And so they maybe have some skill. And then you have guys that are like hardcore off-road guys that want to do really well. And I've coached a couple of those guys to BWR, right? So it wasn't like, I would say when I set up my equipment, I do it differently. And the way that I look at equipment setup, and I think it's very applicable for me or for anyone doing this event, I think what you have to look at is you have to look at what is your dirt skill set and what are you trying to achieve. Those two things have to play well together. So if you're trying to race it, okay, if you're trying to race it, you need to be on race type equipment, which means you have to be on something that is durable enough to get the job done, but fast. Okay. But if you're going to Belgian Waffle Ride because it's 135 miles and it's epic, it's a bucket list, you want a piece of that hard man, hard girl, tough girl pie. You want to taste that. You want to find something special in yourself, in your own, dig your own pain cave different. I highly recommend being able to have a piece of equipment, have a bike that is durable and can make the dirt experience manageable. Okay. And what do I mean by manageable? I mean that when you go on the dirt, you can't ride over your head. Because if you ride over your head, you can lose the race on the dirt. You can't necessarily win the race on the dirt, right? You can lose the race on the dirt. So what I would say is when anybody is choosing equipment, make sure that they have equipment that they can ride and be confident in the dirt. Because here's the dirty little secret about gravel racing and off-road riding, and something that I'm completely infatuated with. You can override your equipment so easily and get yourself into trouble. Like, we can override these bicycles, and there's you don't have to look that hard to see guys that are doing some pretty extreme things on these bikes. Okay, but the problem is when you start taking those chances, when you have a failure, it's a pretty epic failure, and you can have a big crash and hurt yourself, right? Like I did in 17. I gave myself a concussion. Yeah, exactly, right. So what I would say for people is they need to find equipment that they can ride the dirt sections confidently, and if you have very low dirt skill, it's okay to ride a full gravel bike. I would much rather have somebody do that and get through the 135 miles than go, well, I need something that's an all road bike, and then they're so beat up, their neck hurts, their hands hurt, they make a mistake, and it becomes a very costly mistake. If that
so
makes
you're
sense.
Almost saying, like, kind of almost to like dumb it down a bit, like, weigh your bike down, not weigh it, but like, on the road, you're going to kind of give up almost speed and lightweightness, but you're going to be safe in the dirt to where you're not going to crash, or you're going to make it through there safely to where, okay, yeah, maybe on the road you're looking at everyone else, and some people might be on like a 16-pound climbing bike. You're like, oh man, I'm lugging over here with my bigger tires. But then when you get to the dirt, you're going to be super comfortable. And like, because I mean, there's some sand stuff out there, there's rock stuff out there. And I mean, the way I look at it too is like, if you get a flat or if you crash and you're on the deck, like, you're giving up a lot of time other than maybe a minute on a climb or something that's over like a 10-minute period.
Right. Like we said, you can lose the race on the dirt, but you can't win it. Right. And so if we look at it from, like, we're not just talking about winning and losing from who got first, right? Yeah. Okay. I won the race last year, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about
you're
is
also a very small percentage as well too. Like, most people we're talking to, like, they're not going to come like trying to win this thing. And if
that's my point,
but probably they don't need the tips. They should probably know what they need to do.
Well, I want to broaden that, John. What I want to understand is everybody has a win they're going for, right? Everybody has a goal at the beginning of the ride. It might be, hey, I want to finish in sub 9 hours. It might be, I want to finish in sub 7 hours, or I want to get to the top of Double Peak and not have to stop. Whatever that win is for somebody, I want them to be able to achieve that. And what can stand in your way are mechanical issues, right? Cramping, right? And otherwise having equipment failures or body failures that will stand in your way. Okay. The Belgian waffle ride is brutally hard. Okay. So you don't have to try to make it harder on yourself because you got equipment that wasn't durable enough. What you want to do is you want to be in a situation where you can rise to the occasion. Because when you're in your dark place and you're trying to, realize that you have to harden up and you have to toughen it up, let's make that easy. Let's make that decision easy for you so that you can say, hey, like, I can ride this hard right now because I'm well fueled. I've got good equipment. I'm in a situation that's what I would say is a positive spiral, right? Like, you're gonna get closer to that win, as opposed to if we just are riding something and taking chances, and then, and you've experienced this as a moto racer too, right? You crash once, you push harder, you crash again, you push harder, you crash, I'm going to make up time, and then you crash again, and you get in a negative downward spiral. And what I want for people is I want everyone who starts that, whether it's the guy who's, that's famous for starting on an elliptigo and has done it every year on an elliptigo, right? Like, from him, gnarly. All and everybody in between, I want them to have an excellent experience, and I want them to thrive. I want them not just to survive, I want them to thrive. And to do that, you need durable equipment, not equipment that is 200 grams lighter because you're trying to get up a climb 30 seconds faster. Like that doesn't, you're not going to win the race there, man. You're not going to win the race.
Yeah, especially when you're looking at a 9-10 hour day possibly.
No, and that's what I'm saying, man. No way.
Let's so going over the bike equipment, but I want to hear like let us know like how was your nutrition set up last year? Because there's one thing to have the proper bike setup, but like if you're cracked on the bike and you're not feeling good in the stomach and you don't have energy, like you just can't pedal. So like for you, like what was your setup? Because even BWR, that's a bit of a longer day than even you're used to. Like most races you're doing are in the 5 to 6 hour range, and BWR can be up to 7, plus, even for the top guys. So like, did you do anything different, with a longer day, or did you kind of just do what you do, but like a little more, like take us through your day of like, hey, it's an early morning, you guys don't normally race till like 10 o'clock, so you have to be up even earlier, get your food in earlier. Like, how did you go about that?
I would say one thing that the listener is going to want to know is that most of the time I train at that time I was training 30 hours a week pretty religiously. And I would say pretty religiously as in like 6 out of 7 weeks I trained 30 hours a week. So I was doing 5 days of 5-hour rides or more, and I was doing between 5 and 7 hour rides 5 days in a row. And so I was very used to, I knew that the race was going to be about 7 hours. And what I would say is it's one thing to race your bike at 3 hours. It's another thing to race your bike at 4 hours. And it's another thing to, there's plenty of people that can race their bikes at that time frame. But when you get to 5 and 6 hours, very few people are still quote unquote racing their bicycle. And one of the things that drew me to the Belgian waffle ride is I want to be somebody who's capable of doing that. And I still think I have a long way to go to get better at those distances, but I'm at least tasted it and I like the way it tastes. I'll tell you that. So as far as the nutrition is concerned, that I think the listener would want to know, like I eat like I normally eat on when I'm doing a 5 or 7 hour ride. I just eat solid food a lot. I've never been a big, I think this is unsolicited advice, so everyone take it for what it's worth. But when the intensity is really high, I try to go for liquid type of nutrition, and I don't mean gels. I want to be very clear. I don't do gels. I do liquid type stuff. Like we used to be sponsored by a company, Infinite, and they have a great product called Tripwire. First Endurance makes a great product as well. There's a couple of other companies that are doing it. I'm just familiar with what our team has been provided. Heavy carb drink, basically. Exactly right. And I know SIS has something, and but anyway, my point is, when the intensity is very high, I try to go more liquid. Okay. But with that said, I always back that up with solid food. Okay. So my personal rule for myself is I try to get, and for anybody I coach, right? So I've coached a couple guys to, Dirty Kanza, Land Run 100, some, really hardcore, pure gravel races that are, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 hours, 13, 14 hours, right? Leadville, etc. I always try to back that up with solid nutrition, solid food sources. And I try to get 3/4 of the way into the race or into that event. And I suggest getting that far into the event before switching purely to liquid. And I don't think of it as like a hard stop. I think of it as, solid. So if we just say like I did a 6:35 race time at BWR. So like I was eating 30 minutes, I ate a bar, like an hour, I ate an hour and 15 minutes, I ate a bar.
For you?
Yeah,
what do you eat solid food wise?
Well, I mean, to be honest.
Bars, like rice cakes, like what's your go-to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably not the best guy for this, but I will eat whatever's available because I try not to be picky.
I mean, everyone's different. So it's like, like you got to see what you like, maybe it can work out for someone else because everyone's different.
Well, I mean, like to give you an example, right? Like we went by a kind of how do I want to say it? Like a bootleg feed station where like the Cliff Bar people had pulled over to the right side of the road and like they were just standing there. And I was like, well, I need food, right? And I don't care what flavor they're going to give me. I just be like, oh, whatever they're going to give me, I'm going to eat it as long as it's not a gel. I just don't care for them. And that's just my personal thing. So like they gave me 2 Cliff Bars and I ate them, right? And I had whatever I had in my pockets. I mean, we don't have a food sponsor, a hard food sponsor. I just use GQ6 in my bottles and they're a sponsor of ours. And I think their stuff works so good. It's just nice and light and tasty and it's very good. So, I mean, as far as that goes, like I'm free to use whatever I want nutrition wise. And so I can't even remember, like, I don't know. It might've been Lara bars or something I picked up at the local discount.
You're just eating bars.
Yeah. Joy calls it, my wife Joy calls it space food, man. So I just mow down the space food, but I will.
Well, that's impressive. I can't do that after 4 or 5 hours.
No, it's ridiculous. I know, right? Brutal. Dude, I will tell you, I was dying for a peanut butter and jelly. If I could have a peanut butter and jelly.
I need like Hostess donuts.
Oh, or that's a fig Newton or fig Newtons. Man,
yeah, fig Newtons
dude, if I could have fig Newtons, oh boy. Anyway, I digress. Right. So that's what I would say.
Okay, so before we start wrapping this up, I kind of want to kind of hear a little insider knowledge though, because you had such kind of an interesting story on how you actually won this last year. Because at one point you didn't even kind of realize you were leading it. Like, kind of let's fast track the race last year to where it kind of came down to the selection of like the 6 or 8 guys, and at that point, like it's basically just attrition rate. People get dropped on, the climbs, they come back. There's only so much you do until you get to that really, pointy end of the race where it's like, okay, now guys start kind of looking at each other. So let's go there. And like, where was that when there's 6 or 8 of you guys? Like, how many miles were you into it? And like, when did it kind of start coming into your mind of like, all right, it's getting go time. Like, I could win this thing, and let's see how we go.
Yeah, it was so cool, man. This was it was such a great race. Like just from a pure output, like everyone put out, man. Everyone went hard, and that's what I want to be a part of. I want to be there when everybody puts out, everybody gets after it, everybody goes super deep, and then I just want to figure out how much I got left, right? Like, let's get after it. And so we were about 4 hours in, and I can't tell you how many K or miles we were in, but we were in the Lake Hodges section, and we went across really like some rough stuff, and I was the only guy left on a road bike, and I was like, this is like maybe not a great place for me, because like I had already seen Colin Strickland was with us, and he's really aggressive. And I like that about him. And so he was leading, and I had not led any dirt sections up to this point, because my wife had told me, she's like, you don't lead any dirt sections because all you're going to do is yard sale yourself. Like, you're going to try and drop people. Like, you have to. So it sounds crazy, but like I went into every dirt section last because I didn't want to piss off my wife, right? Like, so
you can nod right there.
Right. But I was like, okay, well now there's like 6 of us left, and I could probably like cheat a little bit and she wouldn't be mad. So I went in second on Colin Strickland's wheel, and we kind of went through it, and it was a really fun section. And I just love that area. Like, you're riding hard and you got to kind of like dance with the bike a little bit. And Colin, like I don't have very good brakes. He has disc brakes. I have like, man, I got rim brakes. Like, I'm going to give him a little room. Well, Colin would like look under his shoulder, and my guess is he's like, oh, I'm dropping McCulloch. Like, so he would like twist the grip a little bit, right? So
open it up a little bit.
Yeah. And cause remember, everybody's on my wheel. So he thinks, oh man, I'm just going to drop everybody. I'm going to put a little space in. Right. And maybe I'm wrong. That was what was going through my head at that moment. So he like drills it into this dip, and he crashes. Right. And I can't stop.
Is that where that photo came from? Where you were kind of like helping him up? That's a solid photo.
Well, no, it's actually very funny. So he crashes. I can't stop. So I literally like pile on top of him, and he's like, he's like, sorry, bro. And I was like, and I literally like, poof. I'm like, oh, and I'm like, and he's like, sorry, bro, sorry. And I was like, hey, let's just get up. Let's get going. My chain's off, whatever. And so all the guys come like railing by. So now he and I are maybe like, 10 meters off the back. We're like not far off. Like, we see the guys, everything's fine. And like we're getting going again, and Colin lets me lead because he's a kind guy. So he like lets me lead a little bit. And so I start going. I try to ride this next section that I see the other guys hike a bike across, but I'm like, man, we got to make some time. I don't want to get off my bike because I've got road shoes on. I'm not getting off my bike. So I try to ride this section, and I literally like I hit a rock, dude, and I just like face plant right into this rock, like. And Colin sees that I'm just a dork and I try to do this. So he gets off his bike and he starts walking by me, and he puts his arm out to like help me up. Right. And that's where that photo was, is like, he's helping me up. So it was like, it was like a return the favor. Right. Cause he's like, okay, man. And so anyway, in that time, we got tailed off just a little bit more. But again, we could see the guys. We weren't dropped. We were just having some problems. Right. And so we get back going again. We're going back towards the end of that section. And there's a section there where you pop out on the road very briefly, and then you go immediately right back on towards this dam. And it's what the first section is. I think they call it Lemon Twistenberg the first time. Yep. And then you're going back through it. Okay. So I'm going back, and literally I know that the course goes up into this park on the road, and then right back into the dirt. And I just know that from doing it last year, and I'm following the signs. It's a well-marked course. And then all of a sudden we go through this gate, and it's Colin and I, and there's nobody in front of us. And I start panicking because I'm like, dude, we can't, we can't. Oh, dude. And I know we have about 3K of gravel, which is not really the way my bike is set up. Like I'm not good here, but I'm like, dude, if I get, because I know that the road section is coming up, and there was 3 or 4 guys up the road, 3 guys up the road. And it was Ted, my old teammate Ule, and I think it was Brian Lewis. I think so. Okay. So I think as them 3 were up the road, in my mind, they were up the road. And I'm like, I'm looking at Colin, and I'm like, Colin, we have to effing go now. Like we're all in, bro. And he's looking at me like, what are you talking about, bro? And I'm like, bro, we have 3K to get on. Otherwise it's over. It's over. So as I'm trying to explain this to him, he starts cramping. And I'm like, I can see that he's cramping. And I'm like, man,
bro.
Exactly. I'm like, bro. And he's like looking at me, and I'm like, dude, I got to go. So I just go straight forward, and I put the hammer down. I go as hard as I can, and I go through Lemon Twistenberg or whatever they call it there, and I come out on the road. Actually, I should say I come to the top of this hill, and then there's like maybe 1 more K of dirt that you do. And Victor Sheldon, one of the guys who like the moto support.
Yeah, he's just out there. Hey.
Yeah, he's out there, and I look at him, and I was like, bro, what's the distance? And he looks at me like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, dude, you know how much they're like, I looked at him back, like they went through before me. You couldn't tell me 30 seconds. I mean, what? I'm not asking for like a favor, bro. I'm like, you would tell anybody that, right? And he's looking at me like, dude, you're retarded. There's nobody in front of you. But I didn't know this at the time. Okay. So I think in my mind, I'm full on panicking, because now I'm like, dude, these guys are out of sight. He's not even telling me that they're close. So obviously I'm like way out the back, and I'm like, okay, there's 3 guys up the road. Look, I don't care. I just don't even care. I'm going to go as hard as I can till I either die out here, or I'm just going to they're going to have to peel me off this bicycle. That's what I decided in that moment. And I went as hard as I could do. I was skating across the gravel, like way too many butt pucker moments to mention on this podcast. And so I then come out on the road, and there's 2 cars. There's a SRAM car waiting, and then Michael Marks, MMX, and the lead car, and then there was a vehicle with a camera. And this is what I thought to myself. I'm like, man, the Belgian waffle ride is big time. Like, I'm 4th place on the road,
right? And everything.
And I have a moto and 2 cars and a video car leading. And I'm like, man, the Belgian waffle ride is big time, because that doesn't happen at the Tour of Utah, bro. Like, that's pretty impressive. And this is literally what went in my head. Okay. And I get on the road, and Michael Marks like pulls up next to me, and dude, it's a gnarly headwind. And that's a really hard road section. And
yeah, you're only at 6 hours in.
I think we were at like 4.5.
Oh, four. Okay.
Yeah,
Only 4.5.
I think we're like 4.5, 4:45 at that point. And so I'm like thinking, okay, wait a second. I'm doing the math in my head. I'm like, okay, I got to catch these guys. So MMX pulls up next to me in the car and he rolls down the window. And this poor man, I'm sure he's just like, who knows what's going through MMX's head. You know what I mean? He's probably like, he thinks maybe I think I'm leading or whatever. He thinks he's going to get something special from me. And I like kind of have like a little panic with him. And I'm like, at the time, my wife was like 6 months pregnant or something like that. I can't remember. And so we hadn't decided a name for who my son's name is. Seamus. He was Seamus Brian McCulloch. And at the time, we just called him Baby Brian. All my teammates called him Baby Brian. Everybody called him Baby Brian, right? And so MMX like rolls down the window. He looks over at me and he can't even get a word out edgewise. And I'm like, I didn't come this far to finish fourth. I'm going to ride till I effing die for Baby Brian. I got to do something to make my wife proud. And he probably was like, dude, that is like the cheesiest thing. Of course you're going to ride hard, Brian. Okay. Right. Like, dude, he knows what's ahead of me. I don't even know what's ahead of me. I just know that like, I'm just going to go flat out. And I think 3 guys are like basically team time trialing in front of me. That's what's going on in my head. So I ride like balls out for an hour and a half. Okay. Like as hard as by myself. And it never even occurs to me that there's like, I'm leading. Okay. Now what happens is at one point, the CHP, the CHP moto comes up next to me and he's like, hey, we're going to do a shift change. And I'm like, oh, well, thank you for the information. That's great. Right. But I'm not really in a mental state I'm not really in a mental, yeah. Well, I'm not really in a mental state, but I'm like, sir, yes, sir. Thank you for that. Right. And he looks at me. And so the other guy comes up and it's this big fella. And he's like, this guy is probably like 6'5". I mean, I don't know how big he is, but he's on this big bike. And he's like, oh, hey, you're the leader, right? And I was like, nah, bro, I'm fourth. And he's like, yeah, funny story. And he just starts riding next to me, right? And that was like the first moment where I was like, man.
So is that when you started thinking like maybe I am in the lead?
Well, no, what I had thought in that moment was like, man, how does this guy not understand that I'm fourth? I was convincing myself that I was fourth. I was like, dude, I am so convinced I'm fourth place right now. Like, I don't have the greatest self-confidence. So I was like, man, I'm just like a pile of trash. I suck today. Like, I gotta get it on. And like, I gotta make my family proud because this is not good enough, man. This is not good enough. And I just gotta get harder. I gotta get stronger. I gotta find something more from these pipsqueak legs of mine. Let's go. And this guy was like, yeah, you're the bike race leader. And I'm like, dude, you don't even know what you're talking about. Like, man, you know what, dude? Come on, bro. Come on. Get on your radio and talk to some of these other cars around here. They'll tell you, right? And then so eventually, basically, went through the Oasis and people were cheering and that was really cool. I remember the last gate I went through at the Oasis. I was coming up to, I was a little bit delirious. And the guy came up, there was like a guy on the other end of it. It was like a volunteer, really nice man. And I was like, sir, do I have to dismount? And he very clearly, you have to dismount. Like there's no way that you can bunny hop this thing. Like,
yeah, I know that gate. And you're like coming uphill too.
Yeah. You're coming uphill at this gate, but you're like, I don't want to get off my bike. Right. And so I remember vividly asking him, do I have to dismount? And what I was asking is like, is there a way that I can go around this gate? And he's like, you can't bunny hop that. And I was like, no, I just don't want to get off my bike. And he was like, no, you got to get off your bike, bro. And I was like, oh, and I was like, it took everything out of me to be like, thanks, bro. I'm not mad at you. I'm just smashed. And then I got back on my bike and like, that was like a really good moment because I stopped feeling sorry for myself. And I was like, I don't care. Like, I'm getting fired up. Like, let's get after it. And so I start going and like, I was passing people that were doing the wafer at that time. And I started like, a couple of them, they would see me and I'd ride next to them and like kind of knuckle bump them or whatever. And I'd be like, yeah, bro, get some, yeah. And doing the best I can to stay in a positive mindset. And we got to the base of Double Peak, not really the base of Double Peak, but when you start climbing, because of course it's MMX, you have to climb to get to the climb, right? I mean, that's just how it works. right? That's Belgian waffle ride style. We wouldn't do it any other way.
No, if it
And
was easy, we wouldn't. Yeah, we go do a parking
of
lot for
course,
it.
exactly, right? Exactly. So I'm climbing up to the base of Double Peak, and Victor Sheldon comes up to me and he's like, "Okay, dude, you're in the lead." And I was like, "No, I'm not." And he's like, "Brian, I'm going to tell you one more time, and that's it. You're in the lead. Okay, you've had a minute lead on them for an hour and a half, and they've been chasing you hard. There was 4 of them, and now there's 3 of them." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "And here's the deal. They're coming after you hardcore. You can win this, but you have to go all in on the climb." So this is all going down, and like, dude, I want you to know, I think I'm all in right now. I think I'm all in. And I'm like, dude, like, come on, man, I got nothing left. Right. And then I had a moment of like, I started to feel sorry for myself. Like, I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I've actually been winning this whole time. And like, I haven't enjoyed this process at all. I've just been smashing myself. And now I'm going to like,
do you think if you would have known you were in the lead, you would be going harder, or you would have sat up a little bit to let those guys catch you?
I never thought about that.
Or do you think you're just doing the
question.
same thing?
I've never even thought about that question. I would say, I would hope that I would have just kept riding hard, but, you know, maybe the smart thing to do from a road tactics thing would have been to wait, and wait for them to come across. But, you know, I don't know about that. So, I would say that, you know, Victor Sheldon says, "Okay, hey, man, you know, you gotta find something special." And if you know anything about Victor Sheldon, you know, he's like a many time champion jet ski racer when jet skis racing was legend. He's a legend. Literally, that's the only way to say it. He's literally a legend. Okay, so here he is, a legend. He's a legend of an athlete riding on a motorcycle to support me, who I'm just like, you know, Joe Dweeb bike rider, and he's supporting me. And he tells me, the legend, the slasher himself tells me, "Hey, you got to find more." And I'm like, "Sir, yes, sir." I'm like, "Sir, yes, sir. Whatever I got to do, bro, I'll do it. I don't even care." Right. Remember, I told you earlier, like when good people tell you things, like you just got to follow that advice. So I'm like, I don't know where I'm going to find this, but okay, bro, like maybe you think that I can do more. Okay, let's do it. And so I just started riding like the top of the hill was the finish. I rode as bloody hard as I could. And I know that like some people have seen the video where I was riding that hard, and I got some comments from people. They're like, "Dude, your form is terrible. Like you climb terrible." and I was like,
"Yeah, you got to work on that for next year, Brian."
and you know, I mean, hey, I get it, right? Like, okay, fine, fair enough. But like, it didn't look pretty, but I don't really care about that. Like, you know, so, anyway, so I just went as hard as I could, and I ended up cresting top of Double Peak, and I had like a 10-second lead on Ted. And Ted had dropped everybody else to come across to me. And Ted was on a gravel bike, and Ted's a pretty handy bike rider, as you know. And he's pretty good. He's so Ted like catches me on the downhill, because now I'm on a downhill on a rim brake road bike. Right. And he's on a gravel bike downhill with, it's like super sketchy, dry, like, you know, slippery snail snot. It's like, man. So Ted like attacks on the downhill and like tries to pass me. Okay. And like, he kind of like bobbles. He kind of bobbles because he's sending it hardcore. I mean, and Ted can ride bikes, man. So he sends it into the corner and basically like stands it up into the rock wall. And I can't slow down. Again, as we know, I can't slow down. So I just am like, well, guess this is how it ends right here. We're just both going to pile up into this thing together. And like, basically like the two of us like bounce it and somehow save it. Somehow the two of us save it. And I got in my head at that moment. Again, I was feeling sorry for myself, and I was like, man, like Ted's on the Tour de France. Like he's going to smash me. Like, and he's on a gravel bike. Like there's nothing I can do right now. I'm just going to sit back and, you know, this is a story that never was. And then again, man, like I thought, I just keep thinking back to like, you know, what am I going to do to make my family proud and not quit? What can I do to be better? Right. I tell my athletes that I coach, like, you're better than you think you are. You have so much more to give. right? And I tell people those things, and I want to live that. I don't want to just talk about it. I want to live it. So I stop feeling sorry for myself again. And I'm like, you know what? In that moment, like we pile up into the rock and I just take the lead again. And I'm like, dude, I'm going to send it on this thing or I'm going to die trying. Okay. And somehow we make it down this like treacherous double path thing, whatever. It's ruthless. It's just ruthless. Yeah, and we go down and like, yeah, I mean, you know the course. It's brutal right there, right? And so Ted and I get on the road together, and then like my confidence starts building because I'm like, you know what? There's two ways that bike races are won: you either win solo or in a sprint. So on our team, an Elevate KHS Pro Cycling, everybody's a sprinter, right? You have to know how to sprint because even if you're sprinting against one other person, you still have to know how to sprint, right? And so I'm not a handy sprinter by any stretch, but like, man, I ain't afraid to open it up. Right. And it might look like a fish out of water, but I'll give it everything I got. And, so Ted attacked me on the climb, one of the final road climbs. And I answered that. And, then we came into the final 1K or whatever it was. And there's like a rise into the finish. And I just know that it's like turn, finish. And I'm like, I have to lead. And I don't know what's around this corner because you got to remember, like wafer riders are finishing. There's people that are like driving out of there. There's a lot of like kind of stuff going on. Well, and I found out afterwards, like he's such a kind man. He came up and talked to me and he was like, hey, I really want to apologize because like usually, the finish is shut down for this, but you guys rode it so fast that we were not yet ready for you. And I was like, oh, well, look, dude, like, hey, this is just like a Saturday group ride out in Redlands. Like we always send it in the cars. Like it's just part of the deal. Like that's how, you know what I mean? Like, hey, bro,
yeah, thanks. Come back to the caravan, man.
Like, hey, man, this is like you take your life in your hands when you do a group ride, a bootleg group ride. Like this is nothing, no big deal, right? Like this feels like luxury living. So anyway, with like maybe 300 or 400 meters to go or whatever, I just was like, I'm going as hard as I can to that turn, and I don't care what happens after. I just don't care. And I went.
So that's what I was curious about. Did you go into it thinking like I'm going to take this from the front because you knew like that right hand turn 90 degree going into the finish was what, like you come out at it's like maybe 100 meters, like so if you're like if I make that turn first, he's not coming to come around me, kind of deal.
Yes. No. In my mind, 100%. If I won the race to the 2 turns to go, I had a chance to win the race, and I made it. And that's the chance I had to take because like, hey man, he could have come back and passed me for sure. He for sure could have passed me. But like, if I just went in like full commitment, man, full commitment, like hair on fire, full commitment, there's just like, it's sometimes in bike racing, it's shock and awe. Right. And I don't know. I mean, Ted's a handy sprinter. He's a handy bike rider. He's certainly well tested at distances. He probably could have come around me. Right. But I just went in super hot and was committed and, it paid off. Like I didn't win by much, but it was enough. And, so anyway, that kind of, it worked out and I was pretty smashed afterwards. I'll tell you that. I was there.
I saw it. You look good. You look like you put it all out there.
Yeah. Well, like I told you, I just, at the beginning of the day, my wife had asked me, she's like, well, what are you doing? Right? Like, what do you want out of this? And I was like, I just want to get it all out, Joy. I just want to get it. I want to get everything. I want to squeeze this lemon until there's nothing left. That's all I care about. I want to squeeze the lemon dry. And, I'm pretty happy to say that, Jeff Byers, who's the mastermind behind Topical Edge, PR Lotion, Amp Human Performance. They just have a great product. They have a wonderful product. I use it all the time. And he was there and he helped me because I couldn't walk after. I was just I was so smashed. Great. And Jeff Byers, he's a former center for the NFL, and he's just this mountain of a man. And he's just big deal. Yeah, he's super kind. He literally like picked me up like I was a little play toy, and he's like, hey man, like gather yourself, bro, get yourself together. And I was like, I got nothing to gather with, man. I'm toast, but my wife was pregnant and she was going crazy. And then I got to see my old teammate Ule finish. He finished third, and he's a good friend of mine, and he's actually back on Elevate KHS Pro Cycling for this year. So I'm really, really excited about that. And I got to see him finish, and, obviously Ted and I high-fived, and he's just a good man. And, so it was cool, man. I felt like we were kind of like two gladiators, and we kind of did our thing, and we busted it out. And then after, we could like hang out about it. And then, Sam Ames from the Gear Grinder Grill, that's the guy who makes all the waffles. He and his team are just like
Mr. Rockholler.
Oh man, he is Mr. Rockholler, and I can't say enough great things. If you want to go to killer events, Sam Ames events are awesome, and I go out of my way to go to his events, and at my own expense, happily, because he is just such a wonderful man. And he came over and gave me this huge hug and was like, "Bro," and it was like, that's when I knew it was real. I literally didn't feel like it was real until Sam was like, "No way, dude. Like, I had to stop making waffles to come over here and talk to you. Like, I heard that you just won, and I stopped making waffles at the Belgian waffle ride to come talk to you." You know what I mean? And I was like, man, like, wow, like Sam Ames came to give me a hug. You know what I mean? And like Victor Sheldon came by, and I was like, "Bro, you told me to go all in." He's like, "Yeah, well, of course, dude. You can go more. Like, you're tougher than that. Come on, man." And I was like, Jeez, criminy, man. Like, maybe I didn't really put out. I got to find more, right? So, yeah, it was a cool deal, man. It was a really, really incredible day. Really incredible day.
So, looking back on that, having a little, going back in the time machine on reliving the moments. Are you, what do you think for the 19 one? How can you sum it up as far as like, things keep changing, domestic road scene over in the States, unfortunately, is starting to dwindle a little bit. These events are getting a lot more exposure, becoming a lot more important to, teams and sponsors, but then also, you have a demographic of just the casual cyclist, the weekend warrior. I mean, it's just getting larger and larger in general. So like,
yeah,
what are your thoughts on that? You obviously, I imagine you're excited to come back and, defend and repeat, but like, it's kind of like we're in this new age of, it's not like a shift, but there is definitely a shift of like events going on in the US and what's big and, what's maybe not big anymore.
Yeah. I would say you can't take anything away from the hardcore UCI pro races. I mean, they're so brutal, man. They're so brutal. They're so hard, but there's something beautiful about the Belgian waffle ride and rides like it that are what I would call bucket list events, where you get to really test yourself and find out what you're made of. And like everybody's doing that on that same journey together. And what I would say is what fills my cup is like, I've been racing as a pro for 10 years, and like I've done this a long time, and it's just, there's one thing when you go with other pro racers and you're just kind of in that crucible. But when you get to go and be among your tribe, like I look at myself and I say, like, I'm a cyclist, right? And so those other people that are all there, they're my cyclist buddies, right? Like, it's like, that's my tribe, and I get to go be there with them. And then after, we all get to like break bread together, have a beer, and talk about the day's adventure, right? Like I said, like we're kind of like gladiators, and you have to bring it on game day. Everybody had to bring it that day. Not just me, not just Ted, not just Ule. Everybody had to bring it. Even the guy who finished last. And what I would argue is the people that were finishing at the end, like those people brought it, and those people are badasses. Excuse my language.
Oh,
right?
definitely.
They're studs. They're studs. Okay. And so something to me, if I look at these kind of events and the shift you're speaking of, is like, what makes the LA Marathon special is that you have world-class runners that are run the marathon in, like, let's just say they do a 2:05 or a 2:02 or whatever it is, right? And then you have, people that have been training for it that are pretty proficient, and maybe they do, a 3 hour, a 3.5 hour, like that's a studly effort, right? But then you have people that are doing 5-6 hour marathons. right? And there's people that are doing more than that. There's people that walk that thing, right? But every one of them can look at that and say, hey, like, I'm on this spectrum and I belong here because look, we all did this together, right? And that's what I love about events like the Belgian Waffle Ride, because we're all doing this together and we're just trying to figure out, maybe not everybody is like me that, they want to get it all out, but I think there's something exciting about being able to explore your own personal pain cave and figure out how deep it is. And it takes an event like Belgian Waffle Ride or other things of that stature, that you have to test yourself so deep that you find out it reveals character, right? You've heard that. Like, this is an event that reveals character. It doesn't just say, oh, well, this climber has the best watts per kilogram, or this sprinter has the best finishing sprint. It was like that revealed character. And it does that for every rider. The course doesn't discriminate. Okay. And that's what makes these events something unparalleled and people wanting to be a part of it. Right. And then the fact that we can then create community about it and share those experiences together. Right. Like, I'm eating waffles next to everybody else. And like, after the race, like, I'm just sitting there eating waffles and hanging out and I had like a little moment to myself, which was like really cool. And this gentleman comes up to me and I like had the yellow jersey, they give you a little yellow jersey for winning the race. And it's pretty cool. It's JL Velo. I wear JL Velo. It's good stuff. So I put it on the table and this random guy rolls up to me and he's like, hey bro, cool jersey. And I was like, yeah, man, cool jersey, huh? And he's like, that's cool. Where did you buy it? And I was like, funny story, like over at the JL Velo booth, man, I think there's only one of them though, and he was like, oh, that's awesome. I said, hey man, how was your ride? And he's like, oh bro, it was so hard today, like blah, blah, and he kind of went into his story. And I just loved that, man. I just loved that because I don't want to be fussed over. I don't need any of that, man. I just came to get it all out. And the fact that guy wanted to talk to me and share his story because I was just some guy bike rider to him, that was like the best moment for me because I got to be able to be there and like, this is my tribe. This is who it is. Like, everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time and that's it, right? We're all out here. We're going to give it our best and we're going to have a great time doing it. So I have to tell you, I'm so excited about the 2019 edition. I know it's going to be ultra competitive. There's going to be great guys there, and I want that. I want the event to get bigger. I want it to get better, and I hope that I can show up really fit, and I hope that I can have some good luck, and I hope that I can do all the things that I need to do to influence a good result in my favor, because so many things have to go right to do a good result there. But I'd be lying to you to tell you if I didn't. On every training ride I do, I think of the Tour of Utah, and I think of Belgian Waffle Ride, and I think of Dirty Kansas. That's what I think of. Like that's all I think about when I'm on my bike. Obviously, I have a father, and we have great business, and I think of my athletes. But when I get to think about myself, that's all I think about is those events. I just want to do big, epic, hardcore stuff, and I want to get the most out of myself.
Yeah, well, those are three legit hard events. That is for sure. So, Brian, I'm so pumped that we had a chance to spend almost an hour now just recapping everything that you've done with PWR, and you're about ready to get your season kicked off, and in just a few months you're gonna be back. And
yep, it'll be here before you know it, man.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be like next week. A few months away right now, but it's going to be like next week. Yeah. So,
yeah. There's a lot of things to do between now and then.
Yeah, you got to get fit, stay fit, and, just like anything else, keep that confidence rolling.
Oh, well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and share my excitement about the Belgian Waffle Ride with everybody. I hope that the listeners got something out of this, and I hope that they can take something, they can just take something from it, and they can show up with a mindset of like, they can show up with that warrior's mindset, and that they can be the best they can be on that day and do something special. And then I hope that I'm there to be able to like listen to their story after. Cause that to me would be like, man, if we can break some bread together, have some waffles and talk bike riding, I would really like that.
No, totally. I mean, that's, you gave so many good little tips and nuggets out of this. And that's kind of like, that's kind of the whole direction of this whole, little BWR show we're going to do, leading up to it, is just to educate the rider and, say like, hey, this is some tricks and tips to help you get through the day as best as you can. And, who better than to start with the guy that won it last year? So, from all of us at BWR, man, we're stoked and, much appreciated for your time to, share little insights. And, we'll probably be bugging you a little more before the day happens, get some more info out of you.
I would love that. I would love that. Well, good luck to everybody. And thank you guys for all you do and putting on an incredible event. And, it's an incredible thing to be a small piece of that puzzle. And I'm thankful for it. So thank you guys for all you do.
All right, Brian. Well, get your rest and, you got a big day on the bike again tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. Have a good night.
Later, bro.
You got a big day on the bike.